Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another anatomy movie, and we have another script from the blacklist that makes its way to the big screen. That's right, we're talking about Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence's new movie called Passengers, so stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. First anatomy of 2017, and it's Passengers.
Yes, I'm flattered to be here. Thanks for including me, Phil.
We have Jeff Graham.
Hello, everyone. Jeff Graham here. Great to be back. I appreciate when you guys let me kind of hop in on these anatomies. You guys can find me on Twitter at Jeffrey C. Graham and Instagram at Jeffrey Crane Graham.
And someone who also jumps in from time to time, Carolyn, welcome back.
Hello, I've lost my voice. So I'm sorry about that. It's just going to have to... It was that, or I was just like, I'm not letting it be an all-boys club today. So you'll just have to be patient with me losing
Have
my
you been
voice.
doing
I'm
a lot of
sorry.
traveling? Not as much as Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I literally woke up this morning and went, oh, that's gone. Yeah, it just went.
Well, we'll try to get your
It's
thoughts
somewhere
out
in
early.
space.
while you
I'll
still
just
have
write them
somewhat-
down and you can read them.
There you go. Sounds good.
What did you guys think overall of this movie? I know critically it has not gotten the... it has not gotten a lot of love, let's just say. But I know, Jeff, you liked it.
Yeah, I can see there are problems with this film, but I still loved it. I could say it was probably one of my top 10 of the year, maybe just sheerly for cinematography and set design was incredible. And it's hard not to be charmed by Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt for me. And I really thought that a lot of things didn't necessarily work. I'm not sure we had to introduce Lawrence Fishburne's character at all. And I thought the film worked best when it was kind of this ethereal love story between the two protagonists. But even when the movie kind of went off the rails, I was still having a blast. So for kind of a messy movie, I loved it.
Top 10, wow.
Yeah,
I
that's
know.
a lot, right?
Yeah.
But it's early January.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to write down what my thoughts are.
Yeah.
Because I need you to
Uh-oh.
help me. If you could just read.
So on Caroline's sheet, we have an S-U-C-K and S, which spells sucks in a box. So it seems like the two of us might not agree on our reaction to this film.
I knew I should come in today.
It's good.
That's
I'm
what
glad dissent
saying.
is good on these
To be
panels.
the voice of reason.
But why didn't you...
This film sucks.
Why? I mean, because of the plot overall.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't get past the fact that the plot is creepy.
Creepy.
It's creepy. It's a creepy plot. And even the addition of Chris Pratt's naked bottom and the awesome Michael Sheen, and yes, lovely chemistry between J-Law and Chris Pratt were just not enough to redeem the fact that I was literally like, okay, he tried to kill you.
There was something kind of Stockholm about it, a little Stockholm syndrome kind of thing. And yeah, I know what you mean, that it was a little uncomfortable how the romance developed.
Yeah, I think if it starts with major cyber stalking and then you just creep over
Non-consensual.
and then just be like, you die and I'm not going to tell you.
The thing is, though, I thought the movie handled that well. For what could have been, had it have not been directed in the way it was, I agree. But I think it was emotionally sensitively handled for me.
I think I actually
back to
fall somewhere in the middle. I thought it was a good movie, and I actually, the trailer didn't prepare me for the fact that Chris Pratt was gonna pull this off.
Yeah.
Which was kind of surprising, but it's one of those things that kind of in hindsight. And it would have been funny, this would have derailed the movie, but where Chris Pratt could have just looked at her and been like, see, if I hadn't woken you up, we would have never saved the ship, right?
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
So it's what, you kind of have to be a passenger and go on the journey to really understand the narrative.
Deep.
No, and that's why, because I was thinking about, you said, Jeff, that you didn't like the insertion of Gus. I actually did, because I was like, okay, unless I'm going to watch a porn right now, I can't, how lovey-dovey can they get right
Yeah.
now? I'm done. I can't handle any more of that. And then, we were, as you're kind of thinking about this moral dilemma, also you got Gus, but then we got to save the entire ship. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of takes your thought away from that, and by the end you're left with, well, it's kind of a good thing he did this, ultimately.
Yeah, it definitely became a bigger movie than it was with the introduction of these huge stakes in the third act. I think for me, I thought the movie worked best when it was kind of this ethically questionable, weird love story on a ship. And I kind of was bummed for like the Hollywoodization of the end of it when we met Lawrence Fishburne's character, and then all of a sudden, yeah, because even building the stakes of the ship imploding, we kept seeing cuts, of the control room malfunctioning, and constantly that kind of took me out of what I felt like the strengths of the movie were. But I was still on the edge of my seat, so I'll give it that.
Well, what about, so what would you say? Were there any strengths, or if not, then what were the biggest weaknesses?
Well, like Chris Pratt's bottom for me, massive highlight of the movie. I don't think that should be like glossed over as being just like me just being a bit dodge.
It's a good thing you showed up, because I don't think we would have talked about Chris Pratt's butt today.
I would have talked about Jennifer Lawrence and how there should have been more.
Right. So I think that 2 or 3 minutes of this show should be dedicated to the fact that we get to see Chris Pratt's naked bottom.
There you
and
go.
Thank you, Chris Pratt. I was grateful. These two, less so. But, they can't all be winners. I felt that the movie was very paint by numbers. And so where you're saying, it went through and it did this and it did that. I felt all of that stuff was paint by numbers, which still takes me back to that. You said, did they handle that plot point well? I almost felt like whoever made that film did it we're like, oh, we need to find a reason to wake her up, and kind of just wrote it into the script as if it wasn't a big deal. And then that's ended up being the thing that's hung over the film for everybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That they were probably like, oh, I suppose we ought to have a reason. Hers can't just fail as well. And you know what I mean? They had to come up with something. And I don't think they thought through how
creepy.
How pivotally creepy it would be to watch it and be like, oh, okay.
Well, okay, so...
And then they try and redeem it, and you're like, I don't know if there's a point of redemption for that.
Okay, so let's take it somewhat out of just the context of the movie. But, in a core nugget, I think what they were trying to go for was this idea that isn't it better to fall in love with somebody because you know them than versus just their beauty? And whether or not they succeeded, it sounds like for you they didn't. At least he tried to get to know her. He fell in love with her writing, her voice, her ideas, rather than just oh, here's this hot girl. Which, by the way...
That would be like somebody watching this and deciding that they're in love with you because they've heard your voice on this and they've done this, and then watching everything you do.
What says they don't?
And you having no... it's so one-sided, you having, no consent with that. It not being a two-way thing. You don't fall in love with someone. It's a two-way... It's an interactive process.
She fell in love with him later.
That's what I liked about it, though, is it was very provocative. For a PG-13 movie, there are all these tough questions that are just inherent in the premise. And it might be admittedly a bit gendered. I wonder how the reaction of women versus men seeing this film was. Because I'd imagine maybe women were a bit more skeeved out than men were.
Because men are just creepy and they're cool.
Well, that's not what I mean.
I'm kidding.
Okay, to be fair, her name is given after a Sleeping Beauty, which is the world's creepiest story if you actually think about it. And every girl that I know is like, oh my god, this is the most amazing movie. I love this movie.
No, Sleeping Beauty's very creepy.
It would have been, I kind of was thinking, how interesting would this movie have been if she woke him up? I think it would have been a much more maybe gender dynamic, complex approach to these issues of kind of consent if she had woken up and saw him and kind of fall in love with his ideas.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was hard to empathize with that decision, because I kind of like a movie where you think, well, what would I do in that circumstance? What would I do?
Right.
And obviously it's a movie, so they need someone for him to talk to. And fair play to Chris Pratt. He carries that movie solo for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's it's engaging. That that's an engaging performance. Like you say, the cinematography's lovely. It's nice to watch for that 45 minutes. And then you're like, well, I know she's going to wake up because I know that you haven't paid Jennifer Lawrence an awful lot of money to just sleep through the whole movie. Yeah. So I know that this is happening. Yeah. And I just found it hard to fully put myself in the position of him and empathize and be like, okay, that's a real moral dilemma. What would I have done?
Right.
Because I literally was like, oh.
Well, can we agree that that's why isolation is a punishment, is because it is that devastating.
Torturous.
Right, so then why would you love someone but want to punish them with the same thing?
Well, you're not punishing
you
them with the
love
same
her-
thing because now you got a friend.
It's not
But like,
isolation.
if you love her,
As
then
Woody
you
would
want
say,
her
"You've got
to
a
be
friend in
happy.
me."
You would want her to have a better life, not to be like, well, punishment, isolation is punishment. This is for you.
Here's the thing, though. To his credit, he does fall in love with her so much that he is willing to die for her. You know what I mean? So, while I agree that the initial move was so unquestionably creepy, he gets to a point where he says, "I do love you this much to leave," to sacrifice himself. So I feel like he kind of comes around.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to solve that.
Yeah,
Like,
make up for
they're
that.
like, well, he can't get away with it. We need to,
We need to.
redeem him.
Yeah.
Like he has to show that. Really.
Yeah. But for me, it made it okay. Not the decision, but it redeemed the narrative for me, if that makes sense.
I mean, they've got one hell of a story to tell. Like when someone says, "How did you meet?"
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Well, also, I do think one of the good things kind of about it, there was, and again, I wish in some sense some of it was a little bit more fleshed out, but her idea of kind of like, it doesn't matter what your circumstances are, take advantage of them, because I forget how they word it, but you're missing out on what's there.
Right.
And yes,
Yeah.
this might not be the best circumstance, but they had a lot of fun. They had the world was their oyster, and then eventually they, as we can see at the end, when everyone wakes up, they built this ship in their image.
That's true. I engage with that idea that it's the journey, not the destination.
That's right. It was like Adam and Eve on a ship.
Yeah.
And they made this
also
garden.
a creepy story, but let's not go there.
Well, in some sense, okay. Jokingly, I thought like, are we gonna see like 40 kids running around after they just had sex for 90 years? And...
That's true. There's not much else to do, is there?
Yeah,
I guess there's
eventually.
Dance Revolution and swimming, but
But eventually, you wouldn't think like they would have procreated in some sense.
well, maybe they did. We just didn't see it. Because in the last sequence, there were thousands. Everyone had woken up already, so they might have had kids. We just didn't necessarily. I know what you're saying, but
I mean, I just think it would have been like they should have if they did have kids, it should have been very on the nose. Like, here's the kids.
yeah. Well,
Maybe that's the seat. Maybe Passengers too.
yeah.
The
It'll
kids
be
come
like
home.
The children of the
kids
ship.
And they just arrive, and yeah.
What did you guys think of, so aside from Jim's moral dilemma, like their own ideologies, right? He was very much hope, and she was kind of, in some sense, I don't want to say despair, but she was just kept searching, at the very least, had an existential crisis. She didn't know what she wanted. And what did you guys think about that dichotomy of worldview?
I thought it worked. I mean, like with a 2-character movie, there's not many of these. There are some, but you've really got to create foils. And I think I can't picture this movie working with actors who aren't as talented as Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence.
Well, initially, just kind of going off a side tangent. So, I mean, this was written in 2007. Keanu Reeves and Emily Blunt back in the day were supposed to be the people.
Huh. I don't love Keanu secretly. I think he's.
Do you think he would have added personality? I mean, to me, he's not as bad an actor as people make him out to be, but I don't think he could have carried this movie in that way.
You need someone goofily charming because the premise is so weird. Like, I think anyone else besides Chris Pratt, it would have been maybe hard to get on board with how ethically questionable his decision was.
Well, Chris Pratt is just kind of like a man's man, and when he's tinkering with all these like motor pieces and whatever, I buy into it. I don't know if I could buy Keanu Reeves tinkering with things and
Yeah, I mean, Chris Pratt has that. He's very charming and has that nice humor. And I don't know if I've mentioned it, but he has ever such a nice bottom. I just wanted to mention it again.
Nice.
The handyman thing. I had actually written this down before you said that, right? I promise. On my. I've now written things other than sucks.
It mostly says sucks, but
It mostly says sucks. But so how long have they been asleep again?
30 years, right?
Yeah, 30 years.
Right. So in 30 years, technology changes a lot. And yet his handyman skills are still, even though he has not performed any or updated his skills or learned anything, like he's got like these handyman skills where he's like 30 years in the future and they're just totally still useful. You're like, surely like...
The ship
was
is 30 years old.
Yeah, the ship was designed when he went to sleep. So if he knew the technology then, because no one's awake to update it, right?
I just felt
Yeah,
like
no.
I was a bit like, I just feel like that
But
was
plus
quite
he
an
had no-
old-fashioned, and then they're like, he's going to be a real bloke's bloke, and he's going to be like handy, and she's going to be like a writer and just having a crisis. And you're like, oh, God, that's quite two-dimensional.
Well, I mean, they also, I mean, in terms of handiwork, they did have classes, so we didn't see him like going through the class, but that was what he was going to be taught for 4 months before he went to Homestead too.
Yeah, but I hear they were kind of archetypal. But that's actually what I kind of liked, was this movie had almost like a classic fairy tale thing about it. It was a modernized Sleeping Beauty. So, like, fairy tales are defined by two-dimensional characters, and I think the movie kind of did a good job of giving us, like, a futuristic space opera with really classic themes. I don't know.
Was it a modern Sleeping Beauty? I quite like that.
Yeah, and her name was Aurora, so it's like...
Yeah. Plus, it's very star based, right? Space based.
So I'm
Yeah.
the stars today.
It's very
There
good.
you go.
Thematic.
In honor. Yeah. It's really all I'm bringing.
What'd you say?
I've lost my voice. I've only got sucks to say. So I'm really like, I don't know, does my starry top help? So
got
really
to-
all I've brought to the party. You guys carry on.
Well, it's also, just as a side tangent too, it's interesting that Jennifer Lawrence got paid more than Chris Pratt, even though Chris Pratt is in the movie more.
Yeah.
So good for
J-Law,
her.
holding it down.
Good for
Big
her.
star.
She is.
Michael Sheen, awesome.
He was
He
great. So
was,
let's
like,
talk
he was my
about him.
positive from the film. There you go.
In what ways did you love Arthur?
I just thought that his performance was superb, and like it was just a lovely, charming character. And Michael Sheen's performance in that was just very considered, very subtle, and you're like, ah. I remember Chris Pratt doing an interview where he said, he sort of went to Michael Sheen, hey, this director, he really likes to do a lot of takes. And Michael Sheen came in and did like one take. And Chris Pratt was like, turns out Michael Sheen can just act.
Oh, that's funny.
Actually, that's what happened. Yeah, he really can. He's really good.
And that's what made Jim's decision so good, because he's trying to get advice from something that's not going to give him advice, and he was like, oh, that sounds nice. Oh, that doesn't sound like, he just
Yeah.
however Jim phrased it would be just kind of the response, and so change the question, got a
Yeah.
different response.
Yeah.
It wasn't considered in any means of like, no, that's actually a bad idea.
Yeah, of like whether you can have like an emotional response. I was listening to a report yesterday that said they're bringing out cars. This is true, that have like emotional responses
Wow.
and can kind of read your emotional response, and that's kind of what character's trying to do. Like in there, isn't it? Is you're like he's trying to have an emotional response, but like the thing is that if you have a personality, like everybody's emotional response is different. So you're right, like, can you have this pre-programmed? Because that's definitely happening. This is happening within our lifetime.
Right.
That's something that is mock emotional, like, is there. And you're like, ultimately, it's not real. And you're like, yeah, they give you the response you want to hear. Have I gone off on one?
No, it's a good point to bring up, because I think it's really thematic with what the movie was addressing, which is like, what is humanity? Even if you have a pool, unlimited luxury resources, if there's not someone to share it with,
Yeah.
you're tortured. And Michael Sheen's character Arthur is a perfect example of even the most mastered, refined technology can't replicate the experience of being with someone else.
You are so much more eloquent than I am. Like, I just went blah, 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 and then you're like, so it's about
but that
humanity.
always-
And I'm like, oh, that's what I'm trying to say, thanks.
But it owes his performance. I really think his performance was like really this balance between, is he a robot, is he a person? And it was really the subtle choices made it work, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think, Phil?
I love this character, and that's why he was searching for someone. Arthur just couldn't fill that for him. Not even, and you could argue in some sense, well, he was looking also for a love. Well, no, he just needed a friend, regardless, even if it was a guy. If Arthur could have filled that, then he would have never made that decision. But Arthur clearly couldn't. And in some ways too, like the plot-wise, it reminded me a lot of Titanic. In the regard, there's the good half, and then there's everything that happens on the second part, right? If you had VHS tapes, that was literally the split.
Yeah.
It was the good half and the bad half. Because it's such a long movie. In this, you get that. And also, too, just the whole idea in Titanic, everyone's like, oh, this ship can't sink. And, everyone's response to Jim was, no, a pod can't break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, yes, I get that, but it did. So now what?
That's very astute, Phil. I didn't think of that, but you're right.
Yeah, because I made more comparisons with like Castaway, and like those same ways of like having a Wilson to talk to, and the kind of way that they'd worked that.
You guys are really smart. Both of those are.
Thank you.
I thought
Throwing
of
the
Star
compliments
Trek
back.
because they were in space, and they're also in space in Star Trek. So.
Wow.
I would have said Lost in Space because they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
sort of lost in space.
What about Gravity?
A little bit. Yeah.
Where he goes floating out. I was like, there's a bit of gravity. They've taken a few inspirations.
Yeah, definitely.
And I am surprised at the number of set pieces too. I thought, obviously it's not the initial budget when Keanu and Emily Blunt were going to do it was going to be about $35 million. They've raised this to $110 million budget, and I think it ended up working well. Like it felt like you were on the ship all the time.
It was gorgeous. I was so taken aback by those spacewalk scenes where they would get on their tether and go out. And sometimes I watch space movies and I think there are moments that don't look quite right or CGI hasn't caught up with the ambitions of this film. But there wasn't a moment when I wasn't pretty breathtaken by what I saw. on
Yeah.
screen.
Well, it's
I
always
feel like
easy-
that could have been in 3D and been like really beautiful.
It was showing in 3D.
I didn't see it in
You didn't see it? No.
Yeah.
Um,
Not mine. No, maybe I missed that.
It depends, I mean, with the, one of the easiest ways to make CGI look good is you have everything just dark, right? And so space is obviously naturally black, pretty much, and so that made it, I'm sure, a lot easier to pull off.
Yeah.
You sound like you know a bit about CGI, right? So
To a
tell
degree.
me.
Phil
the-
edits.
Oh,
I don't do CGI.
The
but-
thing with the bit with the scene with the water where she's like the gravity goes
Wow.
and they got the water. I thought that was spectacular.
That
and
was
like I've never
amazing.
really seen anything like that in a movie. How'd that work then?
You know what? I mean, this is kind of the problem with Anatomy is that they come at like we see these movies, but then I wish in some sense we did them after all the special scenes come out on DVD because I can't 100% tell you. I'm sure there's some practical as well as CGI.
Yeah.
I actually
It's amazing,
know a
that
little bit
scene.
about this. I heard an interview. They had to put Jennifer Lawrence in a pool, and they actually tied her down underwater and had her simulate.
Yeah, with the cables.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then they put her in a computer generated, water.
So
Yeah, they
she's in, like, a
extended out
tank.
beyond it.
So she really went. They asked her to do a lot for
She's
that
like
scene.
panicking.
Yeah. So they would bring her underwater for 20 seconds, then release her chains, and she'd go.
Wow.
And she did it, to her credit. So it's a committed actress.
Well, I mean, how much was she paid? I'd probably do it for that.
That's a good point.
20 million plus back end.
Yeah, I'd toast it. For 20 million, I'd get in a tank of water for 20 seconds.
I would too.
See?
Would you, if you were Chris Pratt, would you show your butt for 15 million?
I would show my butt for 1 million. In fact, probably less.
Yeah.
No, but I mean that was absolutely breathtaking. I do agree. They use their moments well, and towards the end also with the fusion and the reactor, that was amazing too. Visually, I can't say enough about this movie. Just like Jeff, I mean, from the cinematography and the production design and everything else.
Even just the ship, how it was designed was really
Like
special.
a sycamore tree,
Yeah.
with the leaves falling
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, and just the idea of having a shield that blocks the meat. They thought of stuff. I feel like it's important in sci-fi movies, and I'm admittedly not a huge sci-fi geek, but it's important to think of all that stuff of the what ifs, because if you're gonna put this thing in space, you've got to consider all those things. And I thought for the most part, I bought in.
I don't know, I found some of those things a bit clumsy, where they'd just gone, oh, I suppose we should have a meteor there. Like they were just yeah, we'll just do that. And we'll
Yeah.
just put in the clumsy line saying that that's a thing.
I know, yeah, it might have felt a little engineered.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was when we talked about Arrival, Dimitri was kind of discussing the difference between sci-fi and science fiction. And sci-fi is kind of just popcorn, like a movie that you just go and watch, like Independence Day 1. Don't watch Independence Day 2. Piece of garbage. But, where it's good, it's based on science, but it's just meant as an action backdrop. Whereas something like Arrival, or you can argue this, it's meant to be, it takes the science, but it's really about the human condition.
I wish Dimitri was here. He really makes good points, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's bright.
Well, we'll have him next week for sure.
Dimitri.
We'll have him for
Yeah,
sure.
I wonder if I have a feeling he would not have liked this movie. What do you think, Phil?
He's, you know what? It's surprising what Dimitri sometimes can like, and sometimes
I know.
so I don't want to, we'll ask him.
Yeah.
But that's you're right. Like that there is this is about the narrative, and it is about that, and it happens to have that backdrop to create that narrative.
I mean, similar movies that I can think of that, Sunshine. I think that's an older movie. It's got a lot more characters, but kind of similar predicament. Moon.
Moon's good.
I can think of. So there's definitely, I guess in some sense, I mean, I thought I brought new elements to that sort of convention, but perhaps not enough. Like Arrival, just completely. I think unfortunately it might be in the shadow of Arrival for some people, because Arrival was just so different in terms of sci-fi and what it did. Have you seen that?
I pulled my "I don't really like it" face about Arrival.
I liked it.
Jesus.
The thing I liked about Arrival was what you're saying was that it was a philosophical movie disguised as a sci-fi movie. That's actually what kind of bummed me out about this movie a little bit, was I felt like it was this kind of provocative character movie set in space, and then all of a sudden the ship's going to blow up and they have to fix the reactor, and I was like, oh, this is becoming so Hollywood. But I feel like I'm being hypocritical because I kind of also liked that too. Like, I was on the edge of my seat while I simultaneously resented the choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I almost
You're
wish...
like, I resent that you've done this, but you've done it in a good way.
Right.
But if you look at like the beat, right? What the beat, I mean, imagine, right? So it's bad enough that this guy got her out only to basically kill her, but at the very least she could enjoy her moments with him, right?
Yeah.
And now they've got to save the ship, and while that's good, if he were to die, she's literally now going to go through what he went through for the rest of her life.
I would have loved that ending. Did anyone think that was going to happen?
That would have been the most. That's okay. It got like what, 13% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
That would have gotten a 1% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Unless the idea was like clinging on to the darkness that you were talking about, of like, what if he had died and then all of a sudden she was faced with the same predicament of, do I wake someone up? And then the last scene is her waking someone up.
Or if she'd have,
dun, dun.
or if he'd have died, but she didn't know she's pregnant, and then you could have had like your same scenario.
Titanic.
Yeah, maybe we should have written this movie, you guys. Come on.
Which I think in Titanic, the girl from I thought that was because Leo and her made love, but apparently I'm told that's not the case.
Well, how else did you get pregnant? What?
She found
It's
some
just
other
from
guy
holding
apparently.
Oh, so I thought you were saying it was an immaculate conception, and I was
No,
like,
it's,
what?
just
no,
it's from
God, no.
holding hands and from toilet seats. I read it.
It's hot tubs. Right.
Hot tubs.
Well, okay, so this is from the director, which, by the way, this is his fourth movie. The last one he did was Imitation Game, which, so in comparison to that, obviously this is a little bit lesser, because Imitation Game was so fantastic. But in terms of the dilemma he wrote, I think most of us faced with the same choice would have done the same thing, making a movie that leaves people room to argue about what they would have done or could have forgiven makes for fascinating storytelling. Apparently not.
Not for Karen.
Well, I mean, I would certainly find it easier to forgive Chris Pratt than certain other people. So I'd be like, oh, I don't forgive you. And then, like, he'd, show me his butt. And I'd be like, maybe I can find it in my heart to forgive you for this. I'm feeling that actually the two-dimensional thing is me here. I'm like complaining about them being 2D, and I'm literally like, I don't know. Chris Pratt could show me his ass, and I'd be fine.
Well, let's talk about the flip decision, right? So at the end, he discovers that he can figure out a way to hibernate her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in some sense, I was wondering if, like, they don't quite explain this, so my mind went into, well, can't they just switch off for a week?
Someone else said that, and I didn't think of that, and I was like, whoa, good catch.
Like, like 1 week she's asleep, then he wakes her up, then he goes to sleep for a week, and then 1 week they're together,
Right.
and then you just kind of rotate until...
Yeah, that'd be like the perfect relationship as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because you get
Just
some
as you're
alone
starting
time.
to get fed up with them, just sleep for a week.
I'll go take a nap.
You're like, just take a week-long nap, and then I'll probably miss you. By
That'd be the
then.
subtle hint, like, hey, are you tired? Are you tired? Want to take a nap?
It's sleepy time.
I didn't think of that. They should have probably tried to explain that away in the script of, unfortunately, once you're in, it's a 20-year commitment or something like that, because when someone mentioned that to me, I was like, oh, man, that is the answer. But
okay, so let's just say that for some reason you could just put one person to sleep and that was it. You can wake them up, whatever. In terms of her decision, what did you guys think of it? Were you guys anticipating it? I guess at the very least.
I thought it was nice. Again, I kind of wish, to me, the parts of this movie that worked best were like the weird provocative moments. That's what made the movie special. So I kind of wish it felt predictable that they would like live happily ever after, Gaga, you know?
Yeah. And also I feel that like they did it in that kind of, we're going to take you up to that point and then we're going to reveal that was what their choice was, but didn't have the emotional scene where that was made. And I was like, I think they're both strong enough actors to have seen that scene. Like, I'd like to have seen that conversation, and I'd like to have seen the moment where they made that choice.
Yeah. I appreciate that with the big budget movie, you do want to have a happy ending. But I would have been interested to see if she was like, I want to live my life on this planet, and I wrote this thing that I want people to see, and I don't know. I think it could have been handled in a way that was a little more emotionally interesting, but it was nice. It was nice.
Well,
You came away with a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I think it was a metaphor because her dad traveled a lot, right, and wrote about his experiences. What she realized was that when you're kind of going through it, there's no necessarily game plan. Like, she was too game plan oriented, and she couldn't be that way. This was kind of thrown at her, and I do think some of the stuff that she wrote in the middle of the movie was kind of really cool to hear, and so. I mean, at the end of the day, let me guys ask you this: what were the possible outcomes? Just in general, forget the hibernation pod, but like they both die before they get to the planet. He finds a way to hibernate them, okay, or I don't know. Well, I don't see a third option necessarily, and so I kind of like that they at least added somewhat of a twist by having to save the reactor. And then he's given this choice, or she's given this choice.
It worked. It definitely. I think it was a tight story. I think like. For the challenges of trying to write a compelling feature-length narrative with two people, I thought like they did a good job introducing enough complications to keep me guessing, which I liked.
Yeah, I mean, you're engaging with very few actors on screen, like that real tight cast like that, and it definitely did engage in that way, and they definitely held it for sure.
All right, one of the. Again, and usually we talk a lot more production and things like that, but kind of where I'll overall leave it unless you guys want to get into it. Thomas Newman composed the score, which I thought was a great score. And interestingly enough, the writer, he had listened to previous scores as inspiration while writing it. So, I don't know if that 100% like came about like that, where he was just like, hey, we gotta get Thomas Newman to do this thing, right? We're gonna get Thomas Newman, but it ended up working out. So
yeah,
that's gotta be a dream come true.
The score is so important for a sci-fi movie. I think if you think of the most iconic soundtracks, you think of like Thus Spoke Zarathustra from 2001. That
and now Interstellar.
And I just feel like space movie soundtracks are really important. The score, because they're they really help set the mood. So I think the score was great.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about unfortunately reception of this thing. So as I mentioned, it cost $110 million. So far worldwide, it has made $122 million. So
I mean, they have promoted this film like crazy. They were literally going all around the globe. She was in Asia and then promoting it here and promoting it. Like, they gave this film, they put so much into promoting this film. And then when you saw the interviews with them, they were like, wow, because they're both so charming and brilliant. They can go on like a million chat shows, and they are great. Like, they look beautiful, so they're gonna get in every magazine, and you get the film out there. And then when they were doing the interviews, they kept saying, well, we don't want to tell you too much about the movie and give it away. And there was a little bit of me that was like, oh, do you think that it sucks?
Yeah. That's interesting. There wasn't as much of an impassioned sense of like, we're so proud of this movie as you've seen with other movies kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know how they ultimately feel about it, but I don't know.
I imagine they're sitting at home on a very large wad of money going, I don't really care. Just bathing in dollars.
Well, think about it this way. It does, at the end of the day, it does show off their acting chops.
Yeah.
So you can't,
It's a big role. I mean, for Chris Pratt, I thought it was such a sort of pivotal moment. When you see what he's gone through as an actor in the last and in his transformation and his evolution as, into being a leading man from being like a kind of
Goofy.
scruffy, goofy guy. Yeah. Who's the other guy that's done that? The one that's married to Thingy Bob. Anyway, his name will come to me in a minute. But J-Law, sometimes I feel like she makes odd choices on the movies that she does, and then because she's in them, like, everyone thinks they're great. But for instance, I didn't like Joy.
Yeah.
And I didn't think Joy was a great movie.
Joy
but
could have
everyone
been
was
a
like,
lot better.
But people will go and watch Jennifer Lawrence. And I think with this film, like, you're like, maybe it's not that good, but people will go and watch Jennifer Lawrence.
What's interesting, though, is the box office wouldn't suggest that. I'm surprised this movie... I would think that this would be a resilient movie in terms of critical reaction just because of Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. And I feel like the critics panning this movie has affected. Because, Phil, you would know better than I would, but this is not a great...
No,
yeah.
this is horrible. This is not what they... I mean, I don't, I think... I don't know. Maybe give this an R rating and have them have sex.
Right, show us
like,
more.
I bet,
Right.
Like, I can literally see a porn spoof of Passengers.
Yeah, it kind
oh
of
my
felt...
goodness.
It did kind of feel like at moments, like, oh, this is... What's going to happen next? Like... Bow, chicka, bow.
I mean, it was inevitable. And she was, Jennifer Lawrence says this is her first time having sex on screen. It's not.
Really?
I'm sorry you've forgotten, Jen.
Oh, Selma? Or what was that movie called?
Not Selma.
No.
Like Crazy.
I was thinking of the one with Bradley Cooper where it was a direct-to-DVD.
Silver
What?
Linings.
That was
I
not
love
direct.
Silver Linings.
That was not direct to DVD.
No,
Yeah,
I'm not thinking of Silver
the,
Linings. There's a
Robert
movie with
Williams.
Bradley Cooper, Jennifer Lawrence that like secretly went direct to DVD.
And
that
they've
no
done
one knew.
like 3, haven't they?
Yeah.
American Hustle.
This was not a very publicized. It's like an Appalachian Mountain romance, but.
Either way, they had sex in that film.
Well, I don't. What are you thinking of? That was another.
I know like Crazy.
Oh, okay.
She had Star Trek guy. Why can't I think of his name? Alton Yelchin.
Oh,
Oh.
Anton.
Anton Yelchin.
R.I.P.
Yes. But so anyway,
Interesting.
Beside the point, the fact of the matter is, I don't know. Maybe an R rating they could have explored deeper things into this. I don't know if
You wanted a bit more hot screen action.
maybe a little bit more dark. Like if your initial premise is that okay, I'm gonna wake her up and essentially kill her. That's a dark theme. Go darker with it in general, which lends itself to an R rating.
Yeah, it definitely was quite sanitized. Their relationship was quite sanitized, and I was like even their arguments were like very clear. Like
This is a good point because it might be the issue of you're trying to create a PG-13 movie for everyone, but grounding it on this kind of non-consensual decision messes with that. It doesn't feel like a movie for everyone because people are so creeped out. But then the problem is if you try to make it an R-rated movie, it's not for everyone anymore. So the movie maybe didn't know what it was, and that maybe that's the reason it's not finding an audience.
And also, I mean, I don't know if this would have helped it, but nowhere in the trailer did it indicate that this, you just thought that they both woke up and,
Right.
and you wonder why. And it's one of those things that if
I also feel like, what would the problem have been with that being the reason that why couldn't her pod have just woken up? Because really the theme of the movie is that it's about the journey, not about the destination. Like it doesn't and I know the director's saying, oh, what could you have forgiven this and the other, but like why did it have to be that?
well, because she said, I actually thought her line, and I don't have it 100%, so I'm going to paraphrase, but there's certain things in life that we don't get a choice about. Well, he didn't get a choice about him wanting to wake up, and even though he had the choice of waking her up or not, she didn't have a choice. And so
I feel like one of the things that you should get a choice about is who you have sex with.
Yeah.
Well,
So
she
that's
could have
creepy.
chosen
That's
not to
lie.
have sex with him. Like she could have been like,
But she didn't know
"Ew,
who he
you're
was.
gross."
Well, like that. I see. So for me, if they'd have just both woken up in that initial power surge, and they kind of hadn't liked each other, but then found their way to that relationship, like changing, maybe.
That's kind of what I liked, though, is it was kind of, like, provocative. Like, I think the question of, like, oh, this is a little uncomfortable made the movie interesting for me. And when she found out, she was justifiably furious. And that was interesting to me, how she wouldn't... Like, I'm really glad I would not have liked the movie if she was like, oh, it's okay.
Because they're also, like, very different people. You know, like he's like a handyman and I'm good with my hands, and she's like, you know, communicator and thoughtful. Like, so they're very different to like be a match.
The movie would have been different.
They would not Tinder match.
Yeah, they wouldn't Tinder match. The movie would have been different if they had just
They
woken
would have
up.
if they were on the ship and that was the only person. Right, it's always the same person.
But
Wait, you didn't swipe me? What?
I think to me it would have felt too conventional if it was just these two star-crossed lovers. Whereas when there's this really weird motivation, the whole relationship is tinged with something kind of dark, which I don't know.
I don't know if there just could have been a different choice, like on that, like because I'm not sure what it added, or if it would just been slightly, or if he had needed her for some other reason.
Yeah, that's true.
If it had been like, well, she's the only person, like rather than making her a writer, like she's got the set of skills that are needed to open the door to this, or like that there was just there was some reason that was less than just than self-gratification and like
point.
selfish.
Okay.
That you could have said,
I could buy
okay,
into that.
like she's an engineer with specialism in this kind of thing.
And sleep therapy.
I don't know,
Yeah.
and like fixing pods. I don't know, like in a thing. Just something where you'll be like, yeah, but I need your specific skill set. It's not just me sitting, looking at you sleeping, and then being like, I think I'd like to do you. I'd like to do you. I'm going to wake you up and do you. Like, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't she have been more useful?
Well,
Writers are
like-
useful.
Right, women are useful, it turns out. We've also got skills. I know, big newsflash.
he wanted companionship, though. I don't think it was just romance.
Right, but then,
Wake a guy up.
right.
But then you can get the benefit. The deepest love is between a man and a woman. Well, of
Unless
course,
you're gay.
unless you're right. I don't want to limit, but a romantic love includes friendship, it includes companionship, and it includes intimacy,
Sure.
which I think
But
is
like, those shouldn't be the reasons that you wake, like you commit somebody to
You murder
a
someone.
unpleasant life.
Which
You
that
can be
was-
like, I love you, so I want you to be in hell with me.
yeah, that's what I liked about the movie was it was so controversial. There was an element of controversy.
Whereas, like, if it had been like, I think there's something wrong with the ship, and she's an intelligent,
I agree.
female
I know what you're
who
saying.
happens to be attractive, and we might fall in love.
Right.
But she would bring to the party that she has this specialist skill.
That would have been
of-
funny. There's like an old, you know, not to like belittle anyone, but like an old lady who's a little bit more skilled, and then like a hot young girl who's like just starting off her career in like pod fixing. And he's like, yeah, I could go with the one
That's
that knows
really
how to fix a
creepy.
pod, or I could go with the hot one who might know how to fully fix a pod.
It's really creepy.
All right.
And also a bit upsetting as an older woman.
Well, it's
I meant like
an energy.
90.
Okay. Not like 29 like me, right? Not like 29 like me.
I
No,
thought you were like 22, so
Always really liked him.
no, I meant the full dichotomy of
That's why I
like,
have a picture of him in my kitchen.
yes.
because that's not creepy at
True
all.
story.
Am I being passengered right now?
Oh, you find it creepy now.
No, yeah.
All right. So overall, 30% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's generous. That's nice.
Well, they cite Passengers proves Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence work well together, and that their chemistry isn't enough to overcome a fatally flawed story. B on audience as an audience score. So
I feel like I wrote that Rotten Tomato. Like, that is exactly what I think of the movie. Is that I like their chemistry, but I have so many problems with the
Right.
premise.
Yeah.
well, let us know what you guys think, and you know, I'm sure if this is an indicator, most of you guys didn't like it, but if you do. Don't be afraid to speak out and curious as to what you thought. And regardless of whether or not you liked it, if you saw it and you're obviously listening to us, at which point, if you haven't seen it and you're still listening to us, good for you.
Now you don't have to worry about seeing it.
But let us know, you know, what you know, are you okay with the moral choices presented in the movie? What would you have done? You know, that's kind of ultimately what I like about sci-fi is that it presents the question and then lets you kind of explore it on your own.
And there's something very dark even in about the choice that you would leave your entire life. Speaking as somebody who has left her entire life in another country and moved countries,
Yeah.
and how homesick that makes me from time to time. And then sometimes I'm like, yes, I'm so glad I'm not.
But at least you can go back. It's not going to take you 90
Right.
years.
So, like, that's a really dark choice to just be like, I don't have anybody in my life that would keep me where I am.
Yeah. There was enough interesting ideas for me in this movie, even if some of them really got messy. The ideas kept me. I kind of applauded that not only did this movie get made, but that they put so much money into it.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a mistake. 'Cause
I just feel like they maybe backed off from really exploring that with the characters.
yeah, there's a lot of ways this movie could have gone, and it might have worked better if it had gone in different ways.
No. Well, there you have it. So thank you guys for joining us on yet another Anatomy of a Movie. We'll be reviewing Fences and I believe Hidden Figures soon, and then tons of stuff in 2017 to look forward to. So can't wait to get that started. Even though, this might not have been everyone's favorite movie, it did kick off our 2017 Anatomy of a Movie. So, but you know what? Fear not, because we also have an archive for what was you guys did a movie last week, or you did a movie last
Nocturnal Animals.
Nocturnal Animals. There you go.
Yeah.
How was that? Did you like it?
It's really interesting, yeah.
Good.
So there you go. You can check that out, as well as I'm sure with the Golden Globes and Oscars, there's tons of buzz about all these movies. So check out our anatomies of them if you haven't already. In the meantime, where can people also interact with you?
Phil, great job leading today. Thanks for bringing me on. If you're listening and you haven't seen this movie, even though she wouldn't, I would recommend you go see it in theaters because it's a beautiful movie. You guys can find me on Twitter at Jeffrey C. Graham and Instagram at Jeffrey Crane Graham. I do some other stuff here at the network, so check that out.
And thank you. And I'm at Caroline Feraday. I'm F-E-R, not like the car. And Caroline_Feraday on Instagram.
You spoke a lot for a person who doesn't have a voice, so kudos.
This is why I lose it.
Yes,
This is why my
kudos.
voice goes.
All right, and we're at the Popcorn Talk, popcorntalk.com, and of course, tons of great content here. So definitely check it out. And if you like sci-fi, less Zach Wilson has been busy, but he was our engineer and also shows up from time to time. He does a show called Sci-Fi Weekly, so definitely check that
Windy
show.
Pops. It'll be Windy Pops.
Yes.
Oh.
That's a BFG reference, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Another Anatomy of a Movie we've done. So we'll see you guys next time on another Anatomy of a Movie. Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.